Herbert Mullen, also known as the Earthquake Killer, is an American serial killer who murders 13 people in California in the early 1970s as blood sacrifices to Mother Nature in order to keep the earthquakes away. Okay. Hey there, my name's Misha. Welcome to All Things True Crime, or welcome back if you're a regular. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like it, share it, comment, and subscribe to my channel so you won't miss my next video. And then if you ding the bell, you'll get notified the next time I upload. That's All Things True Crime. It's truly chilling. Herbert William Mullen is born on April 18th, 1947 in Salinas, California. When he is around 5, his family moves to San Francisco. It seems his father is a stern man but not abusive. Herbert grows up with lots of friends at school and is even voted most likely to succeed when he is 16 years old while attending San Lorenzo Valley High School. It's at this time that he begins to struggle and experience difficulty, just overall general difficulty in life. This is brought on by him having paranoid schizophrenic disorder. The summer after he graduates from high school, in June of 1965, one of his good friends is killed in a car accident. This devastates Herbert, and he builds shrines to this friend and begins to obsess over the idea of reincarnation. In 1969, Herbert is admitted to the Mendocino State Hospital, and this becomes a pattern over the next several years as he is in and out of various mental hospitals, always discharged after his spells deemed no harm to himself or others. Herbert is committed 5 different times to 5 different mental hospitals over the course of these years. By the time he is mid-20s, he has an official diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia, which is heavily accelerated by his usage of LSD and marijuana. Yikes. Not a good idea there, dude. In 1972, Herbert is 25 years old and moves back in with his parents, who are living in Felton, California, in the Santa Cruz Mountains. So Herbert's birthday, April 18th, is the anniversary of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, which was a 7.9, and more than 3,000 people died, and over 80% of the city was destroyed. And in his paranoid schizophrenia, he finds the fact that his birthday shares the date with that earthquake as very significant. And here we go. So the Vietnam War doesn't end until 1975, and it's 1972 right now. But the war is winding down at this point, at least from the perspective of the United States. So he believes that during the war, enough Americans have died to satisfy nature's requirement of blood sacrifices. Okay. As the war is winding down and American soldiers aren't dying in the same quantity, that's sad that they were dying in such a large quantity, but he believes he must begin murdering people in order to prevent nature from striking the city with an earthquake. Okay. Of course, he doesn't consider it to be murder since it is preventing a devastating earthquake. I guess the end justifies the means type situation here. So somehow in his very disturbed and twisted mind, he claims that his father, through telepathy, orders him to kill people. Okay. It is October 13th, 1972, and Herbert is out driving around, or cruising, as a lot of serial killers call it, in his 1958 Chevy station wagon with a baseball bat. He finds a homeless man who he convinces that he's having car trouble too, and the man offers to take a look. He offers to fix the car in exchange for a ride. Herbert agrees and pops the hood. While the man is looking at the engine, Herbert takes his baseball bat and smashes the man in the head. Yikes. After he is done beating him to death, he drags his corpse into the woods and drives off. The body is found the next day. So here's where it gets nutty. Herbert later claims that this guy resembled Jonah from the Bible, and that he sent Herbert telepathic messages saying, "Hey man, pick me up and throw me over the boat. Kill me so that others will be saved." Okay. Except, telepathy isn't in the Bible, so there is that. So, if we're trying to be consistent in here, in our craziness. Okay. So his next victim meets her fate after Herbert's father, telepathically, his father wasn't involved at all, but directs him to kill this woman. as a sacrifice and to test the hypothesis that the environment is extremely polluted and that an earthquake is imminent. So now wait, I thought it was a sure deal, right? So now we're testing the hypothesis. It went from nature is telling me to do this to it's a mere hypothesis that we need to test to confirm. Cuckoo. So he's once again cruising around and finds a 24-year-old woman hitchhiking. He picks her up off the highway, and while he's driving, he stabs her in the chest. Okay, here's another yikes. In order to test the hypothesis of a polluted earth, he eviscerates her, removes her organs, and drapes them over branches in the woods so he can see and examine them better. Several months later, her skeletal remains are found. At this point, Herbert is having doubts. He's concerned that his father's instructions aren't appropriate. Once again, not his father's instructions. So he goes to visit a Catholic priest. He enters a confessional booth at St. Mary's Catholic Church in Los Gatos. According to Herbert, Father Henry Tomei volunteers to be the next sacrifice. With that, Herbert exits the confessional booth, opens the other side, and proceeds to hit, kick, and stab this poor priest. He then runs off, leaving the priest to lay bleeding to death. There is an eyewitness this time, though, a parishioner who watches Herbert flee the church. The parishioner, runs to get help. But in the end, it wasn't really helpful because their description of a tall, thin man didn't really help the investigation very much, if at all. Still struggling with all of this, Herbert decides to join the United States Marine Corps sometime around about January 1973. He decides killing men in combat is a legal way to sacrifice lives to nature to prevent future earthquakes. This all falls apart, though, when he refuses to sign a copy of his criminal record. Because of his refusal, the Marines withdrew their offer. This is also around the time he stops using drugs, claiming the drug use is his problem. Well, that certainly is part of it, but there are other things at play here for sure. It's still January 1973. Herbert decides to find an old friend. He drives to a remote area with cabins. This is where he thinks his old friend / teammate lives, the guy who first gave him marijuana. He knocks on a door, and a woman answers, Kathy Francis. She confirms the guy lives in the area and directs Herbert down the road to another cabin. In Herbert's imbalanced, deranged memory, he claims that she volunteers and in fact insists that her and her 2 children, 2 boys aged 4 and 9, that they be his next blood sacrifices. And then he uses a handgun on 3 of them. He eventually finds his way to his friend's cabin. Herbert interrogates him about why he ruined Herbert's life by giving him the marijuana in the first place. Because the guy couldn't answer this ridiculous question, he gets a bullet. As he lay dying, he manages to crawl to his bathroom, attempting to warn his wife. She locks the door, but he breaks it down and murders her too. He is murdering seemingly random people, so understandably, police at this point believe the cabin murders are drug-related. Not really sure why. And then they didn't suspect any connection to the priest's murder, or the hitchhiker, or the homeless man. So, I guess Herbert lays low for a month, or else they'd never find the bodies, because he doesn't pop back up until around a month later, on February 10th, 1973. He is in a state park in Santa Cruz, just hiking, when he walks upon 4 teenage boys who are camping illegally in the park. He pretends to be a park ranger when he walks up to them. He orders them to leave the park as they are polluting the forest, he says. They're not intimidated by him, though, and they pretty much just ignore him and continue camping. The next day, he goes back to the state park and he murders all of them with his .22 pistol. He then rifles through their things after they're dead and steals $20 and a .22 caliber rifle. Before these bodies are found, which is kind of weird since they are in a state park camping illegally, so you'd think they would be able to hide for very long. But anyway, before they're found later in the week, Herbert is driving around and his eyes land on a man by the name of Fred Abbey Perez, a 72-year-old retired prize fighter and fishmonger, as he is working in his garden in Santa Cruz. Herbert drives past him, then does a U-turn, drives back down the street, stops, gets out, puts the rifle across the hood of his car, and shoots him in the heart. 1 round to the heart. Dirtbag. Can you imagine that crap? Now this is sloppy though, because this murder is committed in full sight of a neighbor who writes down Herbert's license plate number. The police are alerted, they probably issue a bolo, and he is found and ordered to pull over very quickly. He's arrested. The police find the .22 pistol used to murder the folks in the cabins, as well as the .22 rifle used to murder the old man, of course. He did not attempt to fire on the police, which is interesting. Since he used multiple weapons, a baseball bat, his hands and feet, a knife, a pistol, a rifle, and his victims ranged in age, race, sex, police weren't able to connect the dots and find the pattern. Another reason they had difficulty with this is because Edmund Kemper was also out murdering folks in the same area. No chance the cops would be able to figure it all out. That's a shame since so many people died, but, for the most part, right, law enforcement does their best. Herbert committed all these murders across a 4-month period. He is charged with 10 murders by the Santa Cruz County District Attorney's Office. His trial begins on July 30, 1973. Since he has already admitted to the murders, the trial is really focused on whether or not he's legally sane. By U.S. law, the burden is whether or not he understood the nature and quality of his actions. Understanding right from wrong, really. Since he often covered his tracks after the murders and had shown premeditation in some of them, the prosecutor is really able to drive those points home pretty hard, while the defense, just a public defender, argues that Herbert's delusions are what made him murder. It's an interesting point. On August 19, 1973, after 14 hours of deliberation, Herbert is found guilty of first-degree murder in the killings of 2 people, as they are deemed to be premeditated murders, and 8 counts of second-degree murder in the other murders, as the jurors consider those to be impulse murders. So at the age of 26, Herbert is convicted of 10 murders. The Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office charged Herbert with the slain priest's murder. On December 11, 1973, the day his trial is supposed to start, he pleads guilty to second-degree murder after having pled not guilty by reason of insanity to the charge of first-degree murder. His sentence is life in prison. He is denied parole 8 different times from 1980 onward. He is incarcerated at Mule Creek State Prison in Ione, California. While in prison, he continues his crap about his crimes being to save the environment. Eventually, he is diagnosed with schizophrenic reaction paranoid type by Dr. David Marlowe from the University of California at Santa Cruz. At one point, Herbert shares adjoining cells with serial killer Edmund Kemper, another serial killer active in the same area at the same time that I mentioned a second ago. Yikes. So Kemper doesn't like Herbert, saying that he didn't have a good reason to murder. Well, he had a better reason. Kemper once said of Herbert, quote, "Well, he had a habit of singing and bothering people when somebody tried to watch TV. So I threw water on him to shut him up. Then, when he was a good boy, I'd give him some peanuts. Herbie liked peanuts. That was effective because pretty soon he asked permission to sing. That's called behavior modification treatment." End quote. On August 18th, 2022, at the age of 75, Herbert died from natural causes while housed at the California Healthcare Facility. In total, he murdered 13 people from October 13th, 1972 to February 13th, 1973. 10 men and 3 women, aged from 4 to 72. What a dirtbag. In recounting the murder of the priest, Herbert says, quote, "I saw the light over the confessional, and the voice said, 'That's the person to kill.'" End quote. Well, that's creepy. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like it, share it, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Next week, we're going to learn all about the Axeman of New Orleans, an American serial killer who authorities thought was active in New Orleans, Louisiana from May 1918 to October 1919. However, later investigations mentioned similar murders dating as far back as 1911. He would break into people's homes by chiseling out a relatively small hole and squeezing through it. Once inside, he would bludgeon the residents to death with their own axe. Creepier yet, he taunted New Orleans with a threatening letter before disappearing forever. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe.